On a seemingly ordinary day in Tampa, Florida, a chilling discovery shattered the lives of a young family and sent ripples of shock through the local community. The date was January 30th, a day that would forever be etched in the memory of those who knew and loved Alana Devone Sims. Alana, a vibrant young woman brimming with the anticipation of motherhood, became the center of a tragic narrative that would soon capture public attention and raise profound questions about justice and accountability. The initial moments of the discovery unfolded with a sense of quiet horror. Authorities arrived at the scene, a seemingly typical neighborhood in Tampa, to find Alana Sims lifelessly positioned next to her vehicle. The scene presented an immediate layer of heartbreak, as the realization dawned that a young life had been abruptly and violently extinguished. The quiet suburban setting stood in stark contrast to the grim reality of the situation, hinting at a hidden darkness that had unexpectedly surfaced. Adding to the profound tragedy was the innocent presence of Alana's 23-month-old son. Found within the confines of the family car, the toddler was miraculously unharmed, oblivious to the devastating events that had befallen his mother just feet away. This detail painted a poignant and heartbreaking picture, a young life beginning, juxtaposed with another tragically ending. The safety of the child amid such violence became an immediate concern for the authorities and an emotional focal point for the community. The discovery of Alana's body next to her car immediately triggered a wave of concern and speculation. Law enforcement swiftly cordoned off the area, initiating the preliminary stages of what would become a complex and highly scrutinized investigation. The initial priority was to secure the scene, gather any immediate evidence, and begin the crucial process of piecing together the events that had led to Alana's untimely death. Every detail, no matter how small, held the potential to unlock the mystery surrounding this tragic incident. As news of the discovery began to circulate, a sense of disbelief and sorrow washed over those who knew Alana. She was remembered as a young woman full of life, eagerly awaiting the arrival of her second child. The thought that her life, along with that of her unborn baby, could be taken so suddenly and violently left her loved ones reeling in shock and grief. The promise of a growing family had been cruelly snatched away, leaving behind an unbearable void. The image of the unharmed toddler became a powerful and heartbreaking symbol of the tragedy. His innocent presence in the car served as a stark reminder of the precious life that Alana had cherished and the future that was stolen from them both. First responders and investigators likely felt the weight of this reality as they worked to process the scene and ensure the child's well-being. The task at hand extended beyond simply solving a crime. It involved protecting a vulnerable child who had witnessed unimaginable trauma. The initial hours following the discovery were marked by a flurry of activity as investigators meticulously documented the scene, searching for any clues that could shed light on the identity of the perpetrator and the circumstances of Alana's death. Every piece of evidence, from potential fingerprints to any discernible signs of struggle, was carefully collected and catalogued. The authorities recognized the gravity of the situation and the importance of conducting a thorough and impartial investigation from the outset. The local community, upon learning of the tragic fate of Alana Sims, rallied together in grief and support. Neighbors and friends offered condolences to the family and expressed their shock and outrage at the violence that had occurred in their midst. The desire for answers and the hope that justice would be served began to galvanize the community, creating a sense of shared purpose in the face of tragedy. Upon receiving the emergency call, law enforcement officers swiftly made their way to the reported location in a new Tampa neighborhood. They arrived at a scene that immediately conveyed a sense of tragedy and demanded careful investigation. The officers' initial focus centered on a vehicle parked along the street, where the caller had indicated the presence of a deceased individual. As they approached, the grim reality of the situation began to unfold, confirming the devastating news. The officers observed Alana Devone Sims lying lifelessly adjacent to the driver's side of her car. Her position suggested that the events leading to her death had occurred near or as she was interacting with her vehicle. The officers noted her physical condition and surroundings, making initial observations that would later be crucial for the forensic team. The stillness of her body in contrast to the potential activity of the neighborhood created a stark and unsettling image for the first responders who arrived at the scene. As the officers began to secure the immediate vicinity, their attention was drawn to the vehicle itself. Peering inside, they made a discovery that added another layer of heartbreak and urgency to the situation. In the back seat of the car, securely fastened in his car seat, they found Alana's 23-month-old son. The toddler was peacefully asleep, seemingly unaware of the tragic events that had transpired just outside the vehicle. His innocence in the face of such violence deeply impacted the officers present. The officers carefully assessed the child's condition, confirming that he was indeed unharmed. This discovery brought a mix of relief and profound sadness. While the loss of Alana's life was a devastating blow, the safety of her young son became a paramount concern for the authorities. The officers recognized the immediate need to protect and care for the child who had been found in such close proximity to his deceased mother. Simultaneously, other responding officers began the crucial task of cordoning off the area, establishing a perimeter to protect the integrity of the crime scene. Yellow tape demarcated the boundaries, preventing unauthorized access and ensuring that any potential evidence remained undisturbed. This initial step was vital for allowing the investigators and forensic teams to conduct their work methodically and without contamination. While some officers focused on securing the scene, others made immediate arrangements for the care of Alana's young son. Recognizing that the child needed comfort and attention, they likely contacted Child Protective Services or family members to ensure he would be taken into safe and loving custody. The well-being of the toddler became an immediate priority, separate yet intertwined with the ongoing investigation into his mother's death. The initial observations made by the first responding officers played a critical role in shaping the subsequent investigation. Their detailed recollections of the scene, the position of Alana's body, the state of her vehicle, and the discovery of her unharmed son provided essential context for the detectives who would soon take over the case. These initial details formed the foundation upon which the entire investigation would be built.
Tonight, First at 10, the family of Alana Sims tells us she's a mother, and she was killed in front of her child in Tampa. Well, tonight, police are looking for the 22-year-old's killer. The whole thing happened last night near the Easton Park neighborhood in New Tampa. Fox 13's Janae Lewis is live in our newsroom tonight. Janae, I know you actually spoke to the victim's mother earlier this evening. The baby boy wasn't hurt, but now he's going to have to grow up without his mom.
Yeah, Allie, and not just that, little boy that's about to turn 2 years old, but her mother told me that her daughter, Alana, was pregnant at the time of her death. They are in absolute disbelief right now, and they're certainly hoping answers come soon.
Very caring, very loving, willing to do anything for others, always up to do any obstacle that was challenging, very outgoing. She's going to be missed dearly.
In her own words, the mother of Alana Sims described her daughter to me. She says the 22-year-old was the woman found lying dead last night in the Easton Park neighborhood with what police described as upper body trauma. They say she was just feet away from her young son, who was sleeping in a car seat.
She loved her son a lot. He was her everything. So the memories I would have is the joyful moments that she had with her son.
Police believe this was a targeted attack.
This is obviously a horrible tragedy for this family. You have a child now who's without a mother because someone took her life while the child was sitting right there in the car behind her as it happened.
They now hope someone comes forward so they can get this family closure.
We're hoping that someone in the community may have some sort of surveillance footage or may have seen a car coming and going that can help us find out who took her life.
Something Alana's family wants to see happen sooner than later, as another young life is tragically cut short in our city.
She was a lovable soul. I mean, she didn't have to die young. She shouldn't have to die young. And everybody should know that, you know, your loved ones, you want to keep them close because you just don't know.
You certainly feel for her. Police have not officially identified Sims as the victim, but tell us an autopsy is now underway. They are, though, asking for anyone with information to please come forward. And again, if you live in the area where this happened, they also want you to check your surveillance cameras for anything suspicious. Any little bit of information can help.
Hopefully the public will come forward and help catch whoever's responsible. Janae, thank you.
The quiet of the New Tampa neighborhood was now disrupted by the flashing lights of police vehicles and the hushed voices of law enforcement personnel. The once ordinary street had become the focal point of a tragic event, drawing the attention of neighbors and passers-by who observed the unfolding scene with a mixture of concern and morbid curiosity. The presence of law enforcement served as a stark reminder that something terrible had happened within their community. As the sun began to rise, casting its light on the scene, the full gravity of the situation became even more apparent. The image of the young mother found deceased next to her car, with her innocent child asleep inside, resonated deeply, highlighting the fragility of life and the potential for violence to shatter even the most ordinary of moments. The authorities understood the weight of their responsibility to uncover the truth and bring justice for Alana Devon Sims and her grieving family. In these initial moments after the discovery, the wheels of the investigation began to turn. The scene, though heartbreaking, held vital clues that investigators would meticulously seek to uncover in their quest to understand how and why Alana Sims's life had come to such a tragic end, leaving behind a young son who was fortunate to have been spared the violence but would now face a future without his mother. As the initial shock of the discovery began to settle, investigators and the community actively sought to understand more about the young woman whose life had been so tragically taken. The victim was formally identified as Alana Devon Sims, a 22-year-old resident of Tampa, Florida. News outlets actively shared her name and age, painting the first strokes of a portrait that depicted a life full of promise and potential, now abruptly extinguished. Alana's young age underscored the profound tragedy of her passing. At just 22 years old, she stood on the cusp of many of life's milestones, her future stretching out before her with endless possibilities. The cruel hand of fate, however, intervened, leaving behind a void that would be deeply felt by all who knew her. The vibrancy and energy typically associated with youth were now replaced by a stark and heartbreaking absence. Adding another layer of sorrow to this already devastating case was the fact that Alana was 5 months pregnant at the time of her death. This detail transformed the tragedy into a dual loss. The hopes and dreams associated with a new life also cruelly snatched away. The anticipation of welcoming a child into the world, the joy of expecting a new member of the family, all were extinguished in an instant, amplifying the sense of injustice and grief. One could imagine Alana actively planning for the arrival of her baby, perhaps already envisioning a name, decorating a nursery, and dreaming of the future joys of motherhood for the second time. The excitement of feeling her baby move within her, the anticipation of holding the newborn in her arms, these are experiences now tragically denied to her. Her pregnancy highlighted the life-affirming journey she was on, making her violent and even more senseless. Alana's life, though brief, undoubtedly held cherished moments and meaningful connections. As a young mother to her 23-month-old son, she likely actively poured her love and care into raising him. One could envision her laughter echoing through her home as she played with her toddler, the simple joys of motherhood filling her days. Her dedication to her young child underscored her nurturing nature and the immense responsibility she embraced as a parent. The calendar would soon mark another poignant reminder of what was lost. Alana's birthday was approaching, February 13th, a day that should have been filled with celebration and the warmth of loved ones. Instead, it became a day of mourning, a stark reminder of the future that was stolen from her and the milestones she would never reach. The anticipation of turning 23, with all the hopes and dreams that come with youth, was now replaced by the somber reality of a life unfulfilled. Amidst the outpouring of grief, Alana's mother, lled Sims, actively spoke out, her voice carrying the weight of a mother's unimaginable loss. Her statement, expressing her hope that justice would be served for her daughter, resonated deeply with the community. A mother's love and her unwavering desire for accountability for the death of her child became a powerful and poignant aspect of the unfolding narrative. Alana's death undoubtedly sent shockwaves through her family and circle of friends. They actively grappled with the sudden and violent loss, their memories of her becoming precious keepsakes in the face of such profound sorrow. The void left by her absence would be felt during family gatherings, celebrations, and the quiet moments of everyday life. The pain of losing someone so young and full of potential would linger for years to come. The stark contrast between the life-affirming journey of pregnancy that Alana was on and the brutal reality of her murder underscored the senselessness of the crime. The promise of new life, the anticipation of a growing family, stood in stark opposition to the violence that brought it all to an end. This juxtaposition amplified the tragedy and fueled the community's desire for answers and justice. In remembering Alana Devone Sims, the community actively sought to honor the young woman whose life was tragically cut short. She was more than just a victim. She was a daughter, a mother, a friend, a woman on the cusp of a bright future. Chapter 3 of this narrative serves to actively bring Alana into focus, allowing viewers to recognize the profound human tragedy behind the headlines and the deep loss felt by those who knew and loved her. As the investigation into the death of Alana Devone Sims progressed, law enforcement actively focused their attention on identifying the individual responsible for this tragic crime. Through their initial inquiries and gathering of preliminary information, the name of Billy Bennett Adams III quickly emerged as a person of significant interest. Detectives actively began to scrutinize his potential connection to Alana and his possible involvement in her death. Adding weight to this focus was the official statement released by the police, confirming that Billy Adams III was indeed known to the victim. This detail immediately suggested a pre-existing relationship between Alana and her suspected killer, pointing away from a random act of violence and towards a more personal connection. Investigators actively began to explore the nature and history of this relationship, seeking to understand any dynamics or events that might have led to the tragic outcome. Further adding a shocking layer to the unfolding narrative was the revelation of Billy Adams III's immediate past. Investigators discovered that just 3 days prior to Alana Sims's death, Adams had been acquitted of a double murder in Hillsborough County, Florida. This stunning information sent shockwaves through the community and amplified the scrutiny surrounding him as a suspect in Alana's case. The timing of these two events, a man acquitted of murder 1 week and suspected of another the next, was undeniably striking. The recent acquittal in the double murder case cast a long shadow over the investigation into Alana Sims's death. Law enforcement found themselves investigating a suspect who had just successfully navigated the legal system and been found not guilty of a similar violent crime.
Man accused once again of murder. Just about 3 hours ago, a judge denied bond for Billy Adams. He's accused of killing a pregnant mother just days after a jury found him not guilty of killing 2 people in a separate case. Today would have been Alana Sims' 23rd birthday. Her friends, they were in court today as well. They shared with us the type of person she was.
She was sweet. She had one of the biggest hearts ever. She would do anything for anybody that she loved and she cared about. And she loved her son. She adored him. You didn't see him without her, and you didn't see her without him.
Today, the judge also denied a request to put a gag order on what investigators will be able to release now on this case.
Also developing today, the Tampa rapper accused of killing a pregnant woman and her unborn child just days after a jury found him not guilty in a double murder made his first court appearance. You see that virtually right there. Billy Adams going before the judge. While he did not say much, new court documents show he's using a familiar defense. 10 Tampa Bay's Malik Rankin went through the filing, and Malik, it gives us new details on exactly how police say he is connected to the death of Alana Sims.
Today's hearing only lasted a few minutes, but the details revealed in these documents filed ahead of his next hearing on Monday could change what happens. Right now, Billy Adams will remain in jail without bond. In this motion, the state detailed interviews with witnesses and Adams, and how the more questions they asked, the more his story changed. The motion for pretrial detention states Adams told detectives he was home the entire evening of January 30th. That's the night Alana Sims was killed. She was 5 months pregnant. TPD says her body was found on the road of a New Tampa neighborhood. Her toddler son was asleep in the car next to her when police arrived.
It's awful.
Documents show Adams gave police video showing him with friends at the villas that night. He recanted those statements after police later determined that the video was recorded on February 1st and was altered to indicate the January 30th date and location. Just days before Sims' death, Adams was acquitted in a double homicide case.
In fear of Mr. Beats being shot or myself being shot.
He claimed self-defense. Now he's giving police a similar argument. Documents say initially the defendant stated that the victim pulled a gun on him, and while the defendant wrestled with the victim, he shot her. When the defendant could not demonstrate the events, the defendant changed his statement to the fact that the victim pulled a gun on him and he was able to get the gun away from the victim, then shot her in the head as self-defense. On Monday, the state will argue that Billy Adams poses a threat of harm to the community and should stay in jail without bond throughout his court proceedings. That hearing is scheduled for 2 p.m. on Monday at the Hillsborough County Courthouse. Malik Rankin, 10 Tampa Bay.
And Adams is charged with 2 felony counts, first-degree murder and the killing of an unborn child by injury to the mother.
This prior experience within the judicial system potentially presented both challenges and insights for the detectives working to build a case against him in Alana's murder. The public's reaction to the identification of Billy Adams III as the suspect was understandably intense. The knowledge of his recent acquittal in a double murder case fueled widespread speculation and concern. Many actively followed the developments in the investigation, eager to see if justice would be served for Alana Sims, especially given the suspect's recent history with the legal system. The case immediately garnered significant media attention due to this unusual and disturbing connection. Driven by the need for answers and justice for Alana, investigators actively worked to gather any and all evidence that could link Billy Adams III to her murder. This likely involved meticulously reviewing surveillance footage, conducting interviews with individuals who knew both Alana and Adams, and analyzing any forensic evidence that might have been collected from the crime scene and Alana's vehicle. Their efforts were focused on building a solid and irrefutable case against the prime suspect. As the investigation into Alana Devon Sims's tragic death progressed, detectives actively delved into the possible reasons behind such a brutal act. Their inquiries led them to focus on the relationship between Alana and the identified suspect, Billy Bennett Adams III. Through their investigative work, a potential motive began to crystallize, painting a grim picture of the circumstances surrounding the young mother's demise. According to the information gathered by law enforcement, Billy Adams III was believed to be the father of Alana Sims's unborn child. This significant detail placed their relationship under intense scrutiny, suggesting a close and intimate connection between the victim and the accused. Investigators actively explored this connection, seeking to understand its complexities and any potential conflicts that might have arisen. The motive that police ultimately proposed was both heartbreaking and shocking. Billy Adams III allegedly murdered Alana Sims because he was not ready to embrace fatherhood. This devastating assessment suggested a profound unwillingness to accept the responsibilities and life changes that come with having a child. Instead of choosing other options, the authorities believed Adams resorted to an act of extreme violence, tragically ending Alana's life and that of their unborn baby. The implications of this alleged motive were deeply disturbing. It painted a picture of a callous disregard for both Alana's life and the precious new life she carried within her. The decision to end a pregnancy in such a violent manner underscored a profound level of desperation or a complete lack of empathy. Investigators actively considered the psychological and emotional factors that might have driven someone to such a horrific act based on this unwillingness to become a parent. The tragic irony of a life being taken because of the impending arrival of another life was not lost on investigators or the community. Alana Sims, who had embraced the journey of motherhood and was eagerly anticipating the birth of her second child, allegedly became a victim of her partner's unwillingness to share in that joy and responsibility. This stark contrast between the promise of new life and the brutality of death amplified the sense of tragedy surrounding the case. For Alana's family, the prospect of this being the motive behind her murder undoubtedly added another layer of pain to their already immense grief. The realization that the father of their unborn grandchild allegedly took Alana's life simply because he was not ready to be a father would have been a devastating blow, compounding their sorrow with a sense of profound betrayal and anger. They actively sought to understand how someone could commit such an act for such a reason. Following their investigation and the identification of Billy Bennett Adams III as the prime suspect, law enforcement actively executed an arrest warrant, taking him into custody in connection with the murder of Alana Devon Sims. This marked a significant step in the pursuit of justice for Alana and the beginning of the legal proceedings against Adams. The arrest itself likely occurred without major incident, and authorities transported him to the local detention center to await his initial court appearance. Once in custody, the legal process formally commenced with the filing of charges against Billy Adams III. The prosecution actively brought forth indictments, likely including charges of murder for the death of Alana Sims and potentially additional charges related to the death of her unborn child, depending on state laws. These formal accusations laid the groundwork for the upcoming trial, outlining the specific criminal acts that Adams was alleged to have committed. The initial court appearances of Billy Adams III quickly became a focal point of public and media attention. His arraignment, where he would have formally heard the charges against him and entered a plea, drew considerable interest due to the recent verdict in his double murder trial. The courtroom likely filled with reporters and observers eager to witness the first stages of this new legal battle. Adams, flanked by his legal team, actively navigated these preliminary hearings, setting the stage for the more complex proceedings to come. Given the high-profile nature of the case, stemming both from the tragic circumstances of Alana's death and Adams's recent acquittal, the subsequent legal proceedings faced intense scrutiny from the media and the community. Every development, from pretrial motions to jury selection, likely became a subject of public discussion and analysis. The shadow of the previous trial undoubtedly loomed large, adding another layer of complexity and intrigue to the case against Adams for the murder of Alana Sims. As the case moved into the pretrial phase, both the prosecution and the defense actively engaged in the crucial work of preparing their respective arguments. Prosecutors diligently gathered evidence, including forensic findings, witness testimonies, and any other information that could link Adams to the crime and establish his guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Simultaneously, the defense team actively worked to build their case, seeking to challenge the prosecution's evidence and present any possible defenses for their client. The legal maneuvering during this phase was critical, with both sides potentially filing motions related to the admissibility of evidence, witness testimonies, and other procedural matters. These pretrial battles often shape the landscape of the eventual trial, determining what information the jury will ultimately hear and see. The lawyers actively presented their arguments before a judge, who would rule on these various legal challenges, setting the parameters for the upcoming trial. The arrest and subsequent legal proceedings against Billy Adams III represented the formal initiation of the judicial process aimed at determining his responsibility for the death of Alana Devon Sims. The intense scrutiny surrounding the case, fueled by his recent acquittal in a separate murder trial, underscored the high stakes involved and the community's fervent desire for justice for Alana and her unborn child. The stage was now set for a potentially lengthy and complex trial that would ultimately decide Adams's fate. As the trial against Billy Bennett Adams III commenced, the prosecution actively presented their case, aiming to convince the jury of his guilt in the murder of Alana Devon Sims and her unborn child. They began by meticulously outlining the events of January 30th, describing the discovery of Alana's body next to her car and the heartbreaking sight of her unharmed toddler inside. The prosecution sought to establish a timeline and paint a clear picture of the tragic circumstances surrounding Alana's death. Central to the prosecution's case was the presentation of forensic evidence gathered from the crime scene. Experts actively took the stand to testify about their findings, which may have included DNA analysis, fingerprint evidence, or other scientific examinations that potentially linked Adams to Alana or her vehicle. The prosecution likely presented this evidence to demonstrate Adams's presence at the scene and his direct involvement in Alana's death. Witness testimonies played a crucial role as individuals who knew Alana and Adams or had relevant information about their relationship actively took the stand. Friends, family members, or acquaintances may have provided insights into the dynamics of their relationship, any potential conflicts they observed, or Adams's demeanor leading up to and following Alana's death. These testimonies aimed to provide context and support the prosecution's theory of the case. The prosecution actively presented their proposed motive for the murder, Billy Adams III's alleged unwillingness to become a father to Alana's unborn child. They might have presented evidence of conversations, messages, or other indicators suggesting Adams's reluctance or opposition to the pregnancy. The prosecution aimed to convince the jury that this unwillingness provided the impetus for his violent act against Alana. In response to the prosecution's case, the defense actively presented their own arguments and evidence, seeking to create reasonable doubt in the minds of the jurors. They likely cross-examined the prosecution's witnesses, probing for inconsistencies or biases in their testimonies. The defense may have also presented their own witnesses who could offer an alternative explanation for the events or challenge the prosecution's timeline and motive. Underlying the entire trial was the significant fact of Billy Adams III's recent acquittal in a double murder case. This prior legal victory undoubtedly cast a shadow over the proceedings, potentially influencing the jury's perception and their approach to the evidence presented. The prosecution likely worked diligently to draw a clear distinction between the two cases, while the defense may have subtly alluded to the previous verdict. Throughout the trial, both legal teams actively engaged in strategic maneuvering, objecting to evidence, raising points of law, and attempting to sway the jury with their respective narratives. The courtroom became a battleground where the truth about Alana Sims's death was fiercely contested, with the prosecution striving to prove Billy Adams III's guilt and the defense fighting to secure his acquittal. The presentation of evidence and the clash of legal arguments formed the core of this pivotal chapter in the quest for justice for Alana. As the trial against Billy Bennett Adams III reached its culmination, a palpable tension filled the courtroom as everyone awaited the jury's verdict. After deliberating on the evidence presented, the jurors actively returned to the courtroom, their expressions unreadable, holding the fate of Billy Adams III in their hands. The anticipation hung heavy in the air, especially for Alana Sims's family who had endured weeks of harrowing testimony and emotional strain. The foreperson of the jury actively stood and delivered the verdict, announcing the decision reached after careful consideration of the facts. The words that echoed through the courtroom were met with stunned silence. Not guilty. Billy Bennett Adams III was acquitted of the murder of Alana Devon Sims. The immediate reaction was one of profound shock, a wave of disbelief washing over those who had followed the case closely and believed in his guilt. Alana Sims's family actively reacted to the verdict with visible devastation. Their hopes for justice, for accountability for the loss of their daughter and unborn grandchild, were shattered in that single moment. Tears likely flowed freely, and expressions of anguish and disbelief spread among them as the reality of the acquittal sank in. The emotional toll of the trial now compounded with the crushing disappointment of the outcome. The community's response to the acquittal was also marked by widespread shock and frustration. Many who had followed the details of the case and were aware of Adams's recent acquittal in a double murder case actively voiced their opinions, often expressing a deep sense of injustice. The verdict raised questions about the effectiveness of the legal system and the challenges of securing a conviction in complex cases, particularly when a defendant has previously been acquitted of similar charges. Authorities, including the prosecution team who had worked diligently to present their case against Adams, likely expressed their disappointment with the jury's decision. They had actively believed in the strength of their evidence and had sought to bring closure to Alana Sims's family. The acquittal would have undoubtedly been a setback, leaving them to grapple with the outcome and the feeling that justice had not been served. For Billy Adams III and his defense team, the verdict of not guilty brought a sense of relief and vindication. They had actively fought to challenge the prosecution's evidence and to argue for his innocence. The acquittal marked a successful outcome for their legal strategy, although the cloud of suspicion surrounding Adams's involvement in Alana's death might linger in the eyes of the public. The shocking acquittal of Billy Bennett Adams III in the murder of Alana Devon Sims served as a stark reminder of the complexities and uncertainties inherent in the judicial process. Despite the evidence presented and the strong beliefs held by many about his guilt, the jury ultimately did not find him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, leaving the tragic death of Alana Sims and her unborn child without a legal resolution and casting a long shadow over the pursuit of justice in this heartbreaking case. In the immediate aftermath of Billy Adams III's acquittal, a wave of raw and profound grief washed over Alana Devon Sims's family. The not guilty verdict landed like a devastating blow, shattering their hopes for legal accountability and leaving them to grapple with the stark reality that the man they believed responsible for Alana's death would walk free. Their active pursuit of justice through the trial had ended in a shocking disappointment, leaving an unbearable void in their hearts. Alana's mother, Shalivi Sims, actively faced the agonizing task of processing the court's decision. Her earlier hopes for justice, so publicly expressed, now seemed cruelly dashed. The acquittal forced her and the rest of Alana's family to confront the unimaginable, a life tragically lost, along with that of an unborn grandchild, without a definitive legal answer holding the accused responsible. Their active journey through the legal system had not yielded the outcome they desperately sought. The community that had followed Alana's story with heavy hearts also actively reacted to the verdict with widespread disappointment and frustration. Many who had believed in the evidence presented by the prosecution voiced their feelings of injustice, questioning the outcome and expressing solidarity with Alana's grieving family. The acquittal ignited conversations and debates about the legal system and the challenges in achieving convictions in complex criminal cases. With Billy Adams III acquitted, the numerous unanswered questions surrounding Alana's death continued to linger. The specifics of what transpired on that fateful January day remained shrouded in uncertainty for many, leaving a sense of unease and a yearning for a clearer understanding of the tragedy. The absence of a guilty verdict meant that the legal system had not provided a conclusive explanation for Alana's demise, leaving a painful void in the search for truth. Alana's family, along with the community, now actively began the arduous journey of navigating their grief without the sense of closure that a conviction might have provided. The acquittal added another layer of complexity to their healing process, forcing them to find ways to cope with their loss while also grappling with the feeling that justice had not been fully served. The active work of mourning Alana continued, now intertwined with the disappointment of the trial's outcome. Despite the legal setback, the memory of Alana Devon Sims actively persisted in the hearts and minds of her loved ones and the community. Their active efforts to remember her vibrant life and honor her memory likely continued, perhaps through private gatherings, public memorials, or the sharing of cherished stories. The desire to keep Alana's spirit alive served as a poignant reminder of the human tragedy at the center of this case. Ultimately, the aftermath of Billy Adams III's acquittal left Alana Sims's family and the community actively seeking some form of peace amidst the lingering grief and unanswered questions. While the legal chapter might have closed, the emotional impact of Alana's death and the frustration with the verdict undoubtedly continued to resonate, underscoring the profound and lasting consequences of this tragic event. If this video helped you understand the warning signs of domestic violence, please like and subscribe to lled True Crime Stories. More importantly, share these resources with someone who might need them. Comment below with other red flags you've recognized or resources in your community. Together, we can prevent more tragedies like Alana's. Alana Sims should be celebrating her son's milestones, preparing for the birth of her second child, and building the future she dreamed of. Instead, her story serves as a powerful reminder of how quickly domestic violence can turn deadly. Her legacy now lives on through her son, through the foundation established in her name, and through every person who recognizes a warning sign and takes action before it's too late. As we conclude Alana's story, remember her not as a victim, but as a loving mother whose life mattered. The best tribute we can offer is ensuring her tragedy helps others find safety before violence claims more lives.